lines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to continue tapping into the truth. Like I was saying before, we were cut off, and for whatever reason, my attempt to continue with the podcast ended, so I'm going to continue on this final talking point. It is of the utmost importance, and it is the last of the major arguments that's made against the Second Amendment in modern times. So we've got to continue with this. It is too important not to go ahead and get this out here, because the people who want to take away your Second Amendment rights are basing this on intellectual cannon fodder. They're trying to make you think that they're the smartest people in the room, and a lot of times they may very well be, but that's only because they're able to convince you of things that just aren't true, things that defy logic, and things that if you took the time to really sit back and think about it, you would automatically know better. With things that are a matter of common sense, do you have the right to defend yourself? That is a God-given right. That's what we believe. Now, I was talking about the July 7th, 1775 New Bern Gazette report about an attack by an individual who shot 3 people and wounded a 4th person with a sword before being shot by others. There were no police. There was no standing military. Nobody was there to stop this madman from his crazy wild spree. There just wasn't. So it fell upon the militia, the regular, average, everyday, law-abiding citizens who happen to have guns and have them handy, that stopped this guy from chopping up a bunch of people once he no longer had enough ammunition to keep reloading his musket. So the argument about gun violence being different than what it is today, it's false. It existed then. I mean, it's not as if there was no gun crime. And it's not like nobody then thought about whether disarming the population would result in less violence. It's just that after thinking about it, they realized it would never work. And even the most dim-wittedly slow people among our society today, if they stopped and thought about it, they would realize that to be the case too. In 1764, the book On Crimes and Punishment was published. Now, this book is credited with the founding of the science behind modern criminology. And our founders were quite familiar with this work. John Adams confidently quoted from it to the jury during the Boston Massacre trial. Thomas Jefferson was a fan. In his own book, Commonplace Book, Jefferson copied one of the passages from it denouncing gun control, and even called gun control an example of a false utility. That's to say, it was backwards, an irrational approach to crime prevention that will only make the problem of criminal violence worse. Now, according to Jefferson, gun control laws disarm those only who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. He asked the question, now this is in his words, can it be supposed that those who have the courage to violate the most sacred laws of humanity, the most important of the code, will respect the less important and arbitrary ones, which can be violated with ease and impunity, and which, if strictly obeyed, would put an end to personal liberty? Such laws make things worse for the assailed and better for the assailants. These laws are not preventative, but fearful of crimes, produced by the tumultuous impression of a few isolated facts and not by thoughtful consideration. Okay, now in the modern vernacular, if I was going to say this to you, you've already heard me say this to you. Okay? Can it be supposed that those who have the courage to violate the most sacred laws of humanity, if you think somebody is perfectly willing to kill you, do you think it's going to matter to them that there's a law against having a gun, or a law against having a sword, or a law against having a knife? They'll find a way. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the debate about whether or not this kind of violence existed before, it obviously did. We are living in a far more civilized time than the times that these people came up out of. That's something that's important to remember, and it's a historical fact. May not be one that's being taught anymore, but it is a fact, and it is important enough to be kept in mind at all times. Gun laws don't deter criminals, but they do disarm the law-abiding, making them easier to attack and eventually leading to the end of individual freedom. These laws are produced by panicked reaction to individual incidents and not, as the authors of the Declaration of Independence once said, by thoughtful consideration. This round of gun control that stemmed from the Sandy Hook shootings, was that well thought out, or was it a knee-jerk reaction? I have been on this broadcast a multitude of times after incidents such as Sandy Hook, and even right after Sandy Hook. And I have pleaded with everyone who would hear me, don't make the knee-jerk reaction. Don't fall for the instant heartstring, we've got to do something, let's take guns away from everybody routine, because not only is that dangerous to every law-abiding citizen, but the adage that if you make guns criminal, then only criminals will have guns, you make it true. It's dangerous to try and take firearms out of the hand of the populace. Statistically, we've seen time and time again, populations that have higher gun ownership per capita have less violent crime. Populations that have less gun ownership per capita has higher violent crime. And it's true not just within the boundary of the United States, but around the world. Now, some people like to spin certain statistics to make it seem as if that's not necessarily the case. But it's true, and when you dig down to the meat and potatoes and look at the facts, they're there. Now, the next argument against it kind of pulls right back out of it and say, okay, fine, there's always been violent crime, violent criminals. But, that Second Amendment is still outdated. We have modern police force now, so citizens don't need guns anymore. So we can just ignore the parts of the Constitution that we don't feel like we need anymore? Well, that's all right with me in some cases. I mean, why stop at the Second Amendment, right? What if some unelected crazy judge somewhere thinks that it would be good to bring slavery back or to eliminate the right to privacy? Although, in case you haven't been paying attention to the NSA thing, I guess that's already happened. What if they decide to stop having free and fair elections? After all, we do keep voting for Bushes, Clintons, and Kennedys anyway. Why not just set up some sort of rotating monarchy? Right? Well, again, the question kind of falls short. I mean, I think we've already stopped having free and fair elections, but we need to restore them. If the intent is really to reduce crime and violence, the Second Amendment is a very odd place to start, though. I mean, after all, Saudi Arabia, North Korea, they seem pretty peaceful and orderly, right? So, why not mimic them and eliminate the Fourth Amendment so that police can search wherever and whenever and however they want and arrest people who just don't look right? I mean, what have you got to hide if you haven't done anything wrong? Haven't we heard that a ton, especially as the argument of the NSA has continued? I mean, really. We can get rid of the Fifth Amendment. I mean, really, what's the deal with due process? It's a huge waste of time, big waste of taxpayer dollars. If we can just make you to confess to a crime, that's all the more efficient. The Sixth Amendment? Yeah, give me a break. Jury trials? Why, so people like George Zimmerman can walk out of court and not have to face any type of justice? So O.J. Simpson can fool a bunch of morons? You understand I'm being facetious at this point, I hope. Those are examples that a lot of people, I'm sure, will latch on to. I mean, do you really need a lawyer to explain your actions if you're innocent? That's really this is how the linchpin happens. This is how the domino effect happens. Only they started the Second Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, because once we no longer have those firearms, we can't push back. We're just sheep waiting to be herded. And then there's the talk about, the modern weapons. They couldn't have possibly imagined modern weapons. Well, that's funny because actually they had some very bright guys in this group that helped frame the Constitution, and some inventors among them. Benjamin Franklin was a very sharp inventor. The concept of the machine gun actually had already existed. Leonardo da Vinci had come up with concepts of helicopters and machine guns and tanks, although it was still some time before they were actually developed. Saying that they couldn't possibly have imagined them is a far cry from being accurate. They want you to believe that they couldn't have legitimately anticipated them. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, the founders indeed were thinking as far into the future as they possibly could see. I mean, you remember that back in the 1700s, we didn't have an internet, didn't have radio, didn't have TV, didn't have folks like Keith Olbermann on television saying all kinds of crazy things. We didn't have mass forms of communication. But the First Amendment protects both of these forms of communication in radio and television and the internet to some extent. It protects them along with every American that uses these new mediums to broadcast things to other people. Some of them, these other people might find outrageous. You could get something as ridiculous as somebody broadcasting kittens on YouTube. I know none of us have seen any of that. And if somebody suddenly decides that these kittens are offensive because one accidentally, or in the middle of recording them, one stops and uses the litter box, and that's in there, ooh, I'm offended. well, it would still be constitutionally protected, and anyone trying to stop it would likely find a militia of ACLU lawyers trying to bury them under a courthouse. In 1791, we had very few practitioners of Wahhabist Islam on these shores. The number of Mormons? 0. Joseph Smith wouldn't be born for decades. Chicken sacrificing voodoo preachers? Scientologists? There were no Scientologists on the Mayflower, no matter what Tom might want to try and convince you. But today, all of those religions, along with hundreds of others, are protected by the First Amendment's guarantee of religious freedom. How about our Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable searches? Back in 1791, there were no telephones to tap. Yet the police now generally need to get a warrant before they can spy on your telephone conversations. The police do. The federal government obviously doesn't, especially if you're possibly talking to a terrorist. Or, in this case, my Uncle Frank in Wyoming, who's head of a local militia group. Now, our current government definitely thinks he's a terrorist. So, I'm sure they're listening in not only to my radio broadcast, but every telephone call I probably make. Regardless, however, all of our other rights protected by the Bill of Rights have expanded based on evolving technologies. So why should the right to bear arms of all kinds not evolve with technologies? Again, if the question is hard for you to answer, then you might have a bigger problem with our Constitution than just the Second Amendment. But we continue to have the debate. And I'm sure right there, they're going to say, well, as these weapons evolved, surely you don't think that we should have all weapons. Well, guess what? We have bans that have been in place that most reasonable citizens have not really tried to fight, involving fully functional, fully automatic weapons. Hard to make a case that an average everyday citizen needs a fully automatic rifle. But what is important to remember is what people are calling assault weapons these days are not full automatic. They're semi-automatic, which are not any more dangerous than a revolver or a single shot. You only don't have to take nearly as much time in reloading. What they call assault weapons aren't assault weapons. Assault weapons, by definition, actually are the military-grade full autos. What they're calling assault weapons for the bans that have been in place in the past and that they want to do again are simply scary looking. And a lot of the bans, and we've talked about this on the show here and over on Blog Talk, involving some of our stupid gun laws episodes, we talked about pistol grips and folding stocks and things that make absolutely no difference whatsoever to the effectiveness or the danger that a weapon possesses. But these attributes make it closer to their definition of assault. There are people that want to ban things like barrel shrouds and have no idea what a barrel shroud is. When you have people that aren't gun people trying to pass laws about guns, what can you expect? There absolutely is no full automatic weapon involved with the assault weapons ban that they call that. The assault weapons ban doesn't cover military-issue weapons. Never has. Now, there are other pre-existing bans that have existed longer that even the NRA has not tried to fight against because, in all honesty, we don't really need those kind of weapons in our hands. it's the normal garden variety semi-automatic guns that are the, quote, evil assault weapons. So you have a lot of misinformation that's going on out there, and this is the primary point. Gun violence has existed since before we had a constitution. These issues were taking place. There is nothing new in this argument. This is not something that just sprung up because of Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook is being used to move an agenda by gun grabbers who want to end our Second Amendment rights and have been trying to end our Second Amendment rights since before our Constitution was written in the first place. On Crime and Punishment railed against corruption in government. It railed against torture. It railed against several embraced ideologies by the left, but it also made a huge argument about gun control and how it's a waste of time. It was written nearly 25 years before our Second Amendment was. It was an influence. So there is nothing new here. And the advancement of the technologies. Why are so many people outraged that their cell phones got hacked, bugged, and listened to? If you want to use technicalities in your argument towards the Constitution and your protection from the Bill of Rights, then your privacy on these technologies don't exist. Well, I promise you our federal government already believes that to be the case anyway. But at any rate, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll finish up today's broadcast. And I appreciate everyone who listened in to the continuation. I had to get that last couple of points in, and I hope everyone has enjoyed listening in. But let's take that break, and we'll be right back. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio. Yes, that's right. Right here on Spreaker.com, Tap Into the Truth comes to you live. And, of course, we do have everything saved, so you can listen on demand after the fact. We also have tapintothetruth.com. If you haven't had a chance to check out the website, I hope you do so. We're about to make edits from our Independence Day. We've got a few quick videos that are up there that were primarily for entertainment purposes involving Independence Day. If you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, please go over there and do so. We have added a new page for sponsors and friends. Basically, if you see a link over there or if you see a banner or a web page listed, we ask you to go check them out. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're sponsors of the show, but if they're not a sponsor, then they are a friend of the show. And I have strong connections with teapartycommunity.com. And, of course, the Hands Off Our Guns petition drive, which we are continuing because we really want to make sure that we get a maximum number of signatures. The more signatures we get, the harder it is for the politicians in D.C. to ignore the will of the people. And really, that's the reason why I'm debating the Second Amendment today. Not that it's really much of a debate. The Second Amendment is short. It is to the point, and it is easy to follow and understand. You have folks trying to muddy the waters, trying to make it confusing, trying to keep you from understanding when it comes to the issues of the preamble, when it comes to the issues of, well, they couldn't possibly have understood what it was going to be like today. That's crap. Things that I've been saying to you are things that have been said for over 300 years now. Gun violence cannot be remedied by taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. It cannot and will not be fixed that way. And I don't care how bright you think you are, if you're still thinking that taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens is helpful, then you need to think some more on it. Because I don't care how many laws you pass, criminals are criminals. They have no respect for the law. And you're just making it easier for criminals to operate their criminal activities when you allow them to do the things that they get to do when you're unarmed. Now, I understand victims of gun violence have one of two reactions. And lots of times they either go strongly against gun ownership or they go strongly towards gun ownership because they decide they're not going to be a victim. In essence, both sides don't want to be a victim. But what is worse is the fact that this division is being used by a certain set of global elitists that want to make the UN the true source of authority, to do away with the sovereignty of the United States, to do away with the sovereign authority of the American people to pursue our own happiness, and to continue to enjoy the blessings of liberty that were handed down to us, our rights, not from man, not from government, but from God. A healthy dose of respect for the laws of nature and of nature's God. Once again, I remind you that in case you haven't heard, or if you tuned into this broadcast before listening to the first part of today's broadcast, there is a minister in Phoenix, Arizona, who's sitting in jail right now because he was having private Bible study in his home. The local government said that he was not authorized to do so because his home was not zoned to be a church. It's important to remember that he was in no way seeking for his home to be recognized as a church. He was expressing his First Amendment rights of freedom of religion, and he was practicing his religion privately with a small group of people, of like-minded people, who were welcomed at his home. It's no different than you having a group of guys over to watch a football game. It's no different, ladies, than you having some of your friends coming over to have an Avon party or a Tupperware party. It's the same thing here. The only exception is that they were studying the Bible. And if they really are going to start cracking down and zoning ordinances and, you can't do this publicly or you can't do this privately, I will start having a little bit of tolerance for that type of governmental behavior when I see them rounding up Muslims at the airport for breaking out the prayer rugs and taking up security. Taking up safe pathways. Because what happens if there's a disaster at the airport and people need to get out quickly? I mean, let's not forget this past weekend we had one of the Asian airline flights crash in the San Francisco airport. Is it not a public safety issue if there's a group of Muslims involved in prayer in the middle of your path trying to get out if there's some disaster? I don't see them rounding them up, though. Now, some places are smart enough to say, hey, you guys can do this, but come do it over here. I think I made my feelings toward Islam clear at this point, but as long as they're going to still be considered a religion and are going to still be afforded protections of the First Amendment, then so too should the Christians. And I'm sorry, but just because a group of people show up for private Bible study at the home of a minister doesn't mean he's turned his home into a church. So yes, once again, I slip over to the First Amendment here, and kind of the Fourth Amendment too, because how do they know what's going on? Short of raiding the house, which they did. They raided his home when they thought it was going on. They arrested him. He now has to sit in the local jail for 60 days. He then has to spend 3 years on probation and has to pay a fine to the city of $12,180 for having a private Bible study in his home. That's some crime, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, I don't care if you're Christian or not. That's too much. It's way too much. The minute you don't have the right to do something with a group of people that are willing participants in your home, no matter what it is, there's an issue. If you're not breaking some horrible law, and everyone there is there of their own free will and their consent, there is no place for our government to be involved in it. And it doesn't matter if it's Bible study. It doesn't matter if it's a Tupperware party. It doesn't matter if it's a freaking orgy. If everyone's there of their own free will, and no one outside of the facility can be bothered by it, then our government has no business being involved there. It's not an ordinance issue. Somebody in that local government doesn't like these two individuals, the minister and his wife. Maybe it's just directed at the minister. But regardless, this is wrong. So, patriots, to arms, Christians, to prayer. This guy's going to need some spiritual help. He's going to need some emotional help. He might need some financial help. So, all I'm saying is that that's crazy. It's too much. It is just too much. This can't be allowed to stand. Let's take another really quick break, and then we'll close down the show. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio. Yes, that's right. Right here on Spreaker Radio, we come to you live, and of course, you can catch the podcast on demand whenever you like. Sometimes you can listen to them individually. They stand on their own, and then occasionally, like this particular one, we have continuations on the same topic. Sometimes 45 minutes, 46 minutes just isn't long enough. Ran into a similar issue today on Blog Talk. I decided for the next little bit that I would just be doing 30-minute shows over there, and I took on basically the same topic over there. And in 30 minutes, for half of the show, I had almost no time to do anything. In fact, I didn't even get to do a single promotion for the show the whole time, and just ran out of time. And it's hard, ladies and gentlemen. It's very hard right now. If you know of anyone that might be interested in sponsoring the show, please send them this way. I very much need to expand the time slots for both these shows in order to get more information out there. And the only way to do that is with money. Here on Spreaker and over on Blog Talk, in order to get those levels. It's not terribly expensive per month, but when it's coming out of your own pocket and you still have your day job and you're doing all these other things, the way I've been doing it, I enjoy this show. And by crackies, 30 minutes is 30 minutes worth of airtime that, not everybody gets an opportunity to do. But because of Spreaker and because of Blog Talk, you can get that much. Anybody can do it for free on both those formats. You can get 30 minutes of time. But 30 minutes of time when you're really needing to get a point across is so minuscule. That's why I really enjoy the fact here on Spreaker that I can close down one show and go right back into another. I can continue doing it, but it's still so much easier, especially if you're listening to archived, or if you were listening live and then the show ends. If you're not there to pick up when the show starts up again, you miss this, and then you have to go back. So please, as I'm saying, I very much would like to get up to a full 3 hours worth of content. Don't always have to do 3 hours a show. I promise you, it wouldn't be boring though, unless you find this stuff boring. But if you're listening to the show, then obviously either you heard something that was interesting to you, or you found something you needed to argue with, or you found some new information that you have to take back with you to your arguments with those people that are still trying to argue against the Second Amendment. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. We announced last week the June winner of our prize pack, TY Capitalism. Still have not heard back from TY. If we can't hear back by the end of next week, we may do a supplemental drawing and give the prize pack to someone else. But remember, all you have to do to be eligible for the July and the August prize packs is to become a follower of the show. If you follow the show here on Spreaker, that gives you one chance to be in the next drawing. If you follow the show over on Blog Talk, that gives you one. If you do both, that's two. If you go ahead and visit Tap Into the Truth website and send us information or send us a message, up there on the home page, there's a section near the bottom where you can give us your contact information and leave a comment. That gives you an additional entry as well. Or you can just hit the little link directly below that says email us, and you just send us an email. That too will give you an additional opportunity to be in the drawing for the prize pack. Also, if you like the Facebook page, and this is very important, and comment on something posted there and share something, you do both of those. Like the page and then either comment on it or share something. Of course, if you want to comment and share, that of course is appreciated as well. That'll also get you an additional opportunity in the drawing. And the same thing with following us on Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter and then retweet something that we have tweeted, that too will get you an additional opportunity into the drawing. So there's actually several opportunities for you to be able to get additional chances of winning the prize pack. There's a nice prize pack that includes Country Fresh Fudge. It includes certain preserved jelly type goodies from Miss Miller's gourmet line, and certain Amish style recipes from the famous Jake and Amos brands. So it's a nice little prize pack. It's well worth retail, almost $70. So, actually, if I looked at it, it's probably closer to 95. But, that's retail value, and there's a chance for you to get something for really doing nothing more than listening to me yap for a while. And quite honestly, you don't even really have to listen to get in on the prize. Just follow the show. Once you follow the show in one of the two places, you've got a chance. And like I said before, if you do some of the others, you get additional chances. And guess what? You are still in for next month's drawing, even if you're not picked this month. So, again, you can do these wonderful things. So if you don't get drawn this week, but then you have already liked us on Facebook, and then you go ahead and comment and share again next month, then you get that additional opportunity in the drawing next month too. So it's not as complicated as it sounds. I promise you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the long and the short of it. The Second Amendment is probably the most crucial amendment for the very purpose of the fact that in order for us to be able to stand up for ourselves and not just be pushed around when they try to take the others. I mean, all of our rights are under assault. The minute we lose one of them, the others will come to an end. Excuse me. Once we do away with one of these rights, if it's not done properly, if it's not done through the amendment process, well, then we lose all of our rights. The Constitution becomes the useless document that our current federal government already seems to think that it is. We have to stand up. We have to make it clear to our elected officials. We have to make it clear to the bureaucrats who are unelected and think that they're above the changing of administrations and certainly above the laws. We've seen this mentality in the NSA, in the IRS. These are dangerous times. And it is up to us to band together. And whether you're going to freedomconnector.com or you're going to teapartycommunity.com, or if you're just going to listen to shows like this one here on Spreaker and on Blog Talk, or if you're going to do your own show and make sure that your own voice is heard, that's fine. But the important thing to do is find other like-minded people, pull together, and let's start doing the things that need to be done. Because if we don't, while I don't believe that it's too late right now, it may very well be too late, far sooner than any of us realize. I have great love for this nation. I have great love for the people who live here, because for generations now, these people have embodied the spirit of what freedom really means. Self-determination, individual responsibility. We have some folks that have lost their pride because they've been pushed into a system by our federal government that they felt like they've had no other choice. But ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to remind you that freedom is not easy. It's hard. Success is not guaranteed to anyone. But opportunity is. And there are opportunities to be had, and it's not going to mean there won't be failure. It does mean that you're going to have to make your choices, and you're going to have to make the right choices. And if you make a bad choice, you're going to have to deal with the consequences with that. But you're still not done. Depending on what the consequence may be. For most folks, you face that consequence, you move on, and hopefully you keep trying. And this time you don't make that same mistake. Maybe you make a different mistake, or maybe you get success the second time or the third time. The point is you keep trying. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed today's 2 broadcasts. Check out the website. Check out Blog Talk. Remember, don't take my word for it. Definitely don't take their word for it. Use the internet. I know you've got access to it. That's how you're hearing me now. Do some of your own research. Take a little bit of time. Use your brain. And remember, always tap into the truth. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll be back again soon. Thanks.